finally going to meet one of the most hyped up characters in One Piece. Shonen Ouji, here to dig deeper into your favorite anime and manga, and in this video, I'll continue my review of the One Piece manga. So, with that out of the way, let's start this review of chapter 959. So, before I talk about Oden, I want to talk about the beginning of the chapter. We see that everyone is okay, supposedly. We see that everyone's okay. We get like a very little mini flashback. We find out that it seems like nobody was on those ships that were destroyed. But we see everyone like we had seen them a few weeks ago, and they're preparing for the battle, and oh my god, the scene with Luffy, Chopper, and Brook wearing the samurai armor was so freaking cool. And just a side note, I know Oda is very good with inserting a lot of different cultural influences in One Piece, but I feel like his favorite, and I can't blame him, is Japanese culture. If you look at his color panels, all of his art, and all of the really insane drawings, they're all very heavily Japanese influence, and you can see it shining in this shot with the samurai armor. The next scene I want to talk about is between Zoro and Sanji, and personally I had felt like their sort of beef had calmed down. Not that like it was going away, but like they were kind of taking a break, especially a few weeks ago when they had talked, and it was like the first time they were in the same panel together, and Zoro didn't say a word about the whole Big Mom thing. And this kind of confirms that if he does have any issues with that, he's not bringing it up. But we see Sanji tease the ever-living hell out of Zoro about the whole bounty thing, which is hilarious to begin with, because even Sanji knows it's because he's a Vinsmoke. So for him to make fun of Zoro, he's purely doing it to make fun of Zoro because he knows that him, Zoro, and Luffy actually care about their bounties. So it was good to see them fight, because a lot of people have been saying that Zoro's mature now. He's very adult-like. He's being a lot more level-headed. And I thought that was a hunk of baloney. It's like, it's Zoro. He's going to do what he wants to do. He's going to be childish at times. And a lot of people were saying that Sanji was kind of getting, I don't know a good way to put it, but he was getting, the bad end of the deal with Oda. And I don't think that's necessarily fair, only because Wano's not done. But good scene, because classic Zoro and Sanji fight, and it was all the more better. I'd wish to actually see them fighting with their angry faces, but it was hilarious to see that this little fight resulted in Zoro cutting the cliff again. So it's good to see that everything that we know about from the beginning still very present now. The next scene I want to talk about that really went under the radar for me, but I think is a very fair criticism, is the scene with Luffy where he brings up Jinbei and he's talking about how he hopes he's okay, but that, it'd be really nice if you could show up to Wano already. We see Zoro just oh, it's cool. And somebody brought up on Twitter that this is kind of weird because Zoro in Zou had made a point of how much of a burden it was that Sanji was going to Whole Cake Island, because it was going to drag the attention of Big Mom, and that's obviously a pain in the neck because they're already trying to fight Kaido, and this whole mess with Whole Cake Island and Big Mom, and Zoro has been very quiet about it. And again, it's a fair criticism that there were so many scenes with Zoro telling Luffy he needs to act like a leader and not let all this crap happen to the crew. And so we see Zoro and Wano, and I guess this is where people are getting the assumption that Zoro is kind of maturing and becoming more level-headed. But I just don't think that Zoro sees it as a problem anymore. I know before people were saying that it was kind of ridiculous that Zoro wasn't calling out Sanji for that whole mess, and my understanding of it is that Zoro just cares that the crew is back together and that there's no problems with leadership. Like, nobody's disrespecting Luffy. Although, I don't know if he knows about that whole thing where Sanji beat the snot out of Luffy, but we'll ignore that. So, I think the same line of thinking applies with the whole thing with Whole Cake Island and Big Mom. I think what happened is, and this is my interpretation, I think Zoro sees that it was inevitable that they were going to end up fighting the Yonko. So the fact that now they have to deal with Kaido and Big Mom, I'm sure he's not thrilled about it, but I think as Zoro, as the realist of the crew, as Luffy's right-hand man, I think he sees that to try and, like, make all these preparations and take, like, their time to fight the Yonko, I think he realizes that that was maybe a little too optimistic, and he's kind of just embraced, like, all right, we're just going to fight all the Yonko at once now. So, again, that's a very fair criticism people are making. I just don't see it as crippling as other people are reading this. Next, as I had pointed to earlier in this review, we find out that obviously the whole incident with the ships being blown to bits was because of Orochi. Now, there was a few things about this plan that really had me, like, turning my head. First of all, if you watch my previous reviews, you'll see that I'm not the biggest fan of Orochi. Not because he's a bad guy, but because he just seems like a total idiot. And the fact that he's in power in Wano is, like, it's just stupid. Like, he's a moron in my head. Like, he's a dope. But I have to say, the fact that he, like, didn't try to fight all of them and he just took out their ships before they could even start the fight, you know what? Good for you, Orochi. Smart dude. The one thing that had me, like, literally, like, edge of my seat was them blowing up the Sunny. I know Oda's messing with me, and he's messing with everyone, as he does. But if they blew up the Sunny, how not only would I be just, not only would I lose it, but Usopp, after all that stuff with the Mary, and if the Sunny's gone, oh, Usopp is not going to be having that. But again, it was really smart of Orochi to take out all the ships because, like, now how are they going to get around? Especially with the journey to Onigashima, that's going to be, like, ridiculous just to even get there before the fight even starts. Then we see the Scabbards again, and oh my, torture. This is absolute torture to read. Like, how many times have they tried to save Wano? And again, as we can clearly see, it's all going to crap. And not only is it depressing to read, but this whole thing that they bring up about how they never would have been the people that they are without Oden, and how this is their sworn duty. It brings home this idea that they're, like, very strongly, like, ghosts. Like, a part of them, like, actually died in that fire 20 years ago because even if they hadn't been sent in time and they were, like, all just really old, they still would find themselves in the same situation. Like, they would still be ghosts because, at least in their minds, the world stopped for them 20 years ago. I mean, yeah, they met Luffy and they went on these adventures, but, like, the world stopped for them 20 years ago because their savior, Oden, died. Everything he had been working for just away. And to fail and fail again, it's just so depressing to read. So it really brings home this idea that they're ghosts because they literally can't move on with their lives until they take care of this. So for me, it's really hard to read this with the Scabbards because it's just depressing to look at and it's just depressing to think about. But I mean, it's good to read because it adds sophistication, but it also sets us up for one of the most hyped up flashbacks in One Piece, and that is Kozuki Oden. What we see from this very brief bit of a flashback is that this is clearly Oden, or at least it's heavily implied it's Oden. No, it's not even implied. It's clearly Oden. He's got his two swords, and he's kind of walking around like a thug. And we see everybody in Wano freaking out. Hide your wives, hide your daughters. And it's interesting to me because there's a theme in One Piece where these great figures in history start out kind of like scumbags or like thugs. And through their decisions and interactions with the people they live with, the people they govern, what have you, they become these, not perfect, they become these greater people because they rise to the occasion. So we've been seeing a lot about how Oden changed the people around him, whether it was the Roger Pirates, whether it was the Scabbards, whether it was the people of Wano. But we see very clearly here that he wasn't always a saint, and he wasn't always liked by the people of Wano. So I'm really interested to see what happens with Oden, because it seems like he has a very deep character arc, and it seems like he's going to have a lot of personality. So I cannot wait for the next chapter. And unfortunately, that is it for this review. I know there's a lot more to talk about, but those are the things that I needed to talk about. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like. It really does help me out. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can see my future One Piece reviews, as well as my My Hero Academia hero highlight videos. Deku is the first one up, so make sure to subscribe so you can see that when it comes out. Reach out to me on Twitter so that you can see what I'm doing, what I'm reading, etc. Thank you for listening, and I hope to hear from you soon.